Hey, what's up, guys? Ron Harris here, and I want to go over my first bodybuilding contest I ever attended. It was over 34 years ago, February of 1991. I had just arrived in Los Angeles the month before, and I was working as an intern for the American Sports Network company, American Sports Network, who produced the American Muscle TV show. And all the footage you're going to see in this video is taken from YouTube, but they took it from that ESPN, the highlights, which I wrote the script for. I immediately started writing scripts. So this was the Ironman Pro. It was a show that went on for many years out west there. And it was the first show of the season, typically. It would be a week or two before the Arnold Classic. And a lot of times it would sort of set the tone for the Arnold Classic that was to follow a week or two later. A lot of times it was the same guy would win both. Like I remember Flex Wheeler made his pro debut at this show in 1993, winning that, and then he won the Arnold Classic a week later. Many people think that was his best look ever. Anyway, this was, again, the first time I'd ever been to a pro bodybuilding show. I was part of the TV coverage, so I was up there in the front row with our cameraman, taking notes and so forth, and it was the first time I'd seen any of these guys on stage that I'd been seeing in magazines. There are some names here that you'll recognize. There are some, especially you older people, the older guys, anybody who's 40, 50 plus, you're going to say, oh, yeah, I remember him. And a lot of you younger guys will be like, who the hell's that? But they look pretty damn good. So I'm going to go through the whole top 10. And then if you want to drop some comments or whatever, we'll talk. But let's start with 10th place was a guy named Bob Paris. I'll show him in a second here. Bob was known as one of the most symmetrical bodybuilders, aesthetically pleasing bodybuilders of all time. Sort of one of the physiques that inspired the classic physique division many, many years later to be formed. Bob was also the second NPC national champion in 1983. The very first NPC nationals was held in 1982. That was Lee Haney, won the heavyweight and overall. 1983 was this gentleman, Bob Paris. That's John Brown finishing up his routine there. John would pose for so long. So Bob, 6 foot, 230 pounds, by today's standards, that's not a big guy. Even back then, he wasn't really one of the biggest guys, but he just had the most amazing shape. Rarely did I ever see him come in super, super lean, but boy, he was amazing at posing and presentation. Some of these routines were just spellbinding. How well did he do? So let's see. The best he ever did at the Olympia in 1984, he was 7th place. 85 Olympia, he was 9th place. He had a lot of top 5 placings. He did 11 pro shows. In 1988, he did a bunch of Grand Prix shows. 1989, he did 10 shows that year. This is when they used to have the Grand Prix circuit, and the guys could hit, 4 or 5 shows in 4 or 5 weekends in a row over in Europe. Very, very common. The last show we ever saw Bob at was a 92 Chicago Pro. He got 10th place there. He retired. Bob had a lot of struggles as one of the first. I believe he was the first openly gay male bodybuilder, and he did take a lot of heat. A lot of people think he lost his Weider contract because of it and lost a lot of endorsement deals. A lot of fans turned on him once they found that out, and it's a shame because he was a pretty fantastic bodybuilder. Next guy I want to show you was from Algeria. His name was Mohammad Benaziza. A lot of people knew him as Momo. So Momo had turned pro back in 1987 at the World Amateur Championships, which was called the Universe for a long time. He turned pro as a lightweight, meaning he was only 154 pounds. He ended up putting on substantial size. And before I show you, he's one of only 2 men that ever beat Dorian Yates as a pro. Momo beat him at the 1990 Night of Champions, and then Lee Haney beat Dorian at the 1991 Mr. Olympia, and then nobody as a pro ever beat Dorian Yates again. But let's take a look at Momo. Shorter guy for sure. That's not him. That's Wilhelm Jasnowski. Here we go. The Algerian Atlas, Mohammad Benaziza, 5'3", says 178. I think I was pretty good. I used to go around and actually ask the guys what they weighed. I think with him, I needed a translator. I also remember the next day driving him and Andreas Munzer back and forth between the Marina Pacific Hotel and the World Gym in Venice because we were shooting some workout footage with these guys for the TV show that ended up in Star Profiles. Momo, he had 6 pro wins in 1990. The last Olympia he did was 5th place in 1992. And unfortunately, he passed away shortly after that, right after winning a Grand Prix show in Holland, Momo Benaziza. one of the first, big scandalous deaths that we had in our sport. Really rocked the industry at that time. Next guy I want to show you didn't have a really long pro career. I'm talking about Franco Santoello from New Jersey. Franco, the older guys here will remember, was the spokesman, the face of a supplement company called Cybergenics that used to sell these kits with all these different pills and little eyedropper things, and it was ridiculous, but it was expensive. In today's money, like a 90-day kit would probably be about $300, and a 120-day kit, they came in, I think, 60, 90, 120 days. It'd be a lot of money in today's dollars. Because I remember my wife, we were engaged at the time, and she bought me one of those. Anyway, Franco Santoello, let me show you Franco. Franco turned pro at the 1989 NPC Nationals. He won the light heavyweight division. Troy Zucolato beat him for the overall. Oh, that's the wrong guy. No, yeah, because it's ending. I have a little overlap on these. So let's take a look at Franco. Franco had these amazing arms, amazing legs, 5'6", 204. And remember, there was no 202 or 212. There was no lightweight division back then. So all these guys, regardless of their height and weight, they were all up on that same open stage together. I always loved Franco's arms and legs. I always coveted those. I wanted arms and legs like Franco. Just a brutally thick, powerful looking physique as far as I was concerned. He did 7 pro shows altogether. 5 of those were this year, 1991. He did another one in 93 and another one in 95. Best placing he ever got was 7th place at the 93 Ironman. Franco did have some substance abuse problems. He was able to beat those, and he became a minister. And he's a very devout Christian and a minister to this day. So that was Franco Santoello. Next guy I want to show you is another man who certainly inspired the classic physique division in a big way. Talking about Francis Benfatto from France. Francis did 19 pro shows from 1988 to 1993, and then he came back. 93, he was done. He came back how many years later? 13 years later, 2006. I think he was about 45 years old, closer to 50. He looked fantastic. So look at the shape and the symmetry and the lines on this guy once we get through with Franco here. Yeah, Benfatto, he never placed that well because he wasn't a big guy, but boy, the shape, the proportions, the symmetry. Here he is, Francis Benfatto, 5'6", 178. And I'll tell you, if there had been a classic physique division back then, I think this guy would have been the Olympia champion. He was that good. He just had a hard time comparing in terms of mass, sheer mass with the bigger guys. But good Lord, like I said, if there had been a classic physique division that had height and weight limits, he would have done very, very well. Next guy I want to show you is from Canada, Steve Brisbois. Now, Steve is a perfect example of someone who probably would have done much better had there been a 212 division or 202. He was only about 160 pounds on a good day on stage. Before I show you, he did, let's see. He was actually the 1986 Canadian lightweight and overall champion. We'll go to him now. And we're still finishing up, Francis. For a lightweight to win the overall at a national show, and the Canadians only had that one show back in those days. They had one man a year turn pro. In 1986, he was that man, 5'4", 160. Again, just a lot of muscle on a very small frame, very light-boned guy. He did 23 pro shows, best he ever did. He took 5th place at the Arnold Classic in both 1990 and 1992. I should add that the same year he won the Canadians, he went to the World Championships, World Amateur Championships as a bantamweight, which is 143.25 pound weight limit, and he won that. So he earned his pro card twice that year, 1986. I do want to share a funny story with him real quick before I move on. It was probably in 1991 or 2. He was out in Los Angeles visiting and training at Gold's Venice, and I would go there to train myself. Gold's Venice was my gym for about a year and a half or so in 91, 92, in that era. And I was trying to impress everybody by how strong I was, right? Because I was this dopey 21-year-old kid. I had skull crushers. I was doing skull crushers. Put a 45 on each side. I was banging those out, no problem. Then I put on a second 45 because, if you can do 145 on each side, you should be able to do that. What's that? So that's 180 pounds plus the bar is probably 15 or 20 pounds. It was too much weight. Let's put it that way. So no spotter. I'm doing shit reps, I'm sure. And I dropped the bar behind me. And I sat up fast. Steve was waiting for the bench, I think. And I heard this ripping sound as I sat up. Now, I had a mullet, like a big ponytail type of thing in the back. And it tore right out of my head. There was no blood or anything. It didn't take any of the scalp out, but it came right off, like the whole thing. And Steve was horrified. He's like, "You all right, buddy? You okay?" And I played it off, and I'm like, "Oh, it was so embarrassing." All right, so that was Steve Brisbois. Next guy, Vince Taylor. I need to set him up because he was one of the greatest bodybuilders of the 1990s and far beyond. Vince turned pro at the 88 Nationals. He won the light heavyweight and overall, which Sean Ray had done the year before. He did his Olympia debut the next year in 1989 in Rimini, Italy, with third place. He was also third place at the Olympia this year, 1991, in Orlando, Florida, where Lee Haney won his eighth and last Olympia. Vince had 21 pro wins. He won the Arnold Classic in 1992, and he won 5 Masters Mr. Olympia titles as part of 21 overall pro wins. Let's take a look at Vince. I'm actually kind of surprised that he did as poorly as 5th here because he was a damn good bodybuilder. I have to think that he was a little bit, the condition was off. I mean, it's hard to tell from this footage. The resolution is not great because it's, this is somebody downloaded a VHS and to YouTube, and that it is what it is. So, but he had these amazing arms. He was not a big guy. He's 5'8", he's probably about, I think it said he was about 210 at the most, but tiny joints, very full, very round muscle bellies. Yeah, you can see the condition wasn't great there. But Vince was one of the best. And if you follow Vince on Facebook, he's over 70 years old now, and he looks almost exactly the same. Hasn't lost much size, stays super lean, still has those arms. Looks like he could jump back on stage anytime if he wanted to. Next guy I'm going to show you is from France, and I bet a lot of you young guys have never heard of Terry Pastel. Pop that out of the way. Dopey ringlet. Terry from France, another shorter guy, lighter guy. And again, they had to mix it up with the big guys. They had no choice. There was no option for them. There was no 202, no 212 class. And he did very, very well. He did 47 pro shows. He won the 1990 Holland Grand Prix. He did a lot of Grand Prix shows. A lot of these guys in the 90s, they would do a spring circuit of Grand Prix shows over in Europe where they would have anywhere from 6 to 8 usually in a row, like on back-to-back, a Saturday, a Sunday, then the following Saturday, Sunday. So these guys would go out to Europe for a month and hit like 8 shows. They would do that in the spring, usually after the Arnold, and then they would do another Grand Prix circuit over in Europe right after the Olympia. So these guys competed a lot back then. So Terry Pastel was known for his I should also add that he was a star in both the NABA and the WABA organizations in Europe. He won all their major titles before he moved on to IFBB Pro League. That was just called IFBB. We didn't dare. So that's Vince finishing up his routine. Terry, you're going to see, he was known for a couple things. His abs were always amazing, and he had these great arms. For a guy who was only 5'4", 176 pounds, I don't know what the arms measured, but they were just enormous, just so full, so thick. You could see they attached way down by the elbow joints. Structurally, he was kind of a narrow guy, and I think that hurt him at times. But he put a lot of muscle on that frame, as you can see. He just wasn't blessed with super wide clavicles like some guys are, like a Derek Lunsford. That leads, you saw there at the end, the next guy we're going to get into, the late Andreas Munzer, who passed away in 1996. He turned pro at the 89 World Games. Best he ever did was the 1990 Arnold Classic. The year before this, he had been 3rd place. Andreas, he did a good amount of pro shows. Yeah, he was actually 9th place at the Olympia 3 different times, Andreas, 1990, 1993, and 1994. Now, he was known for condition. I think the name Andreas Munzer still comes up a lot, even among the younger guys when they talk about being shredded. This is finishing up with Terry. Andreas had this quality to his muscles. Everything was just dry and striated. You could see every little fiber. 5'10", 210, again, not a mass monster by any means. The physique had some flaws for sure. Didn't have great hamstrings. Had pretty good quads. The shape and the structure, you could see he's narrow across the clavicles, but the quality of the muscles was what intrigued people, what people used to freak out about. I mean, if you Google some high-res images of him, you'll see. You can even get a taste there. He had striations on top of striations. This footage really is not doing him justice. I've had other videos in the past where I had clearer footage, like from the Arnold Classic and the Olympia, where you could see how good he looked. So that was Andreas Munzer. He was third place. Second place guy, I'm sure a lot of you have never heard of Renell Jean Vier, originally from Haiti, moved to Connecticut, and that's where he became a bodybuilder. He was famous when he won the 1988 USA light heavyweights. He didn't turn pro there because he had to win the overall back then. He lost the overall to John Defendis, the heavyweight winner. But the big deal about that show was that he had been taken to the hospital right after prejudging from cramping from diuretics. Most people didn't even think he was going to make it to the finals. He came back and he won his class, which these days you get top 2 at the USA in any class, you're a pro. Back then you had to win the overall. He didn't get it. So he had to go on to the World Amateur Championships, which we called the Universe for many, many years, to win your pro card. So let's take a look at Renell after Andreas wraps up here. So Renell's best placing was this same year. It was actually a week or two later. He went to the Arnold Classic and he got second place to Sean Ray. He competed from 89 to 92, came back again from 98 to 99. Never won a pro show, but yeah, again, beautiful shape, symmetry. This is a guy that probably, again, if there had been a classic physique division, I bet he could have lost a little weight to make the weight for that. And I think he would have done very, very well because he wasn't a massive guy. He just had very, very pretty shape, small joints, nice round muscle bellies, good poser too. Yeah, Renell. I'm sure I'm messing the name. So that'll take us to the winner, who was JJ Marsh. Let's see. JJ turned pro in 1986 by winning the overall, the light heavyweight in the overall at the USA Championships. He would go on to win the Houston Pro in 1990. He won this. Those are his 2 pro wins. And his best placings at the Arnold were this year. So a week or two after this show, he went to the Arnold and got 4th place. So Renell actually beat him. He had beaten Renell here. Renell beat him at the Arnold. And then he went to the Arnold again in 1993 when Flex Wheeler won and got 5th place. So let's take a look at JJ. Like I said, JJ is someone I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have never heard of because he's been retired for so long. I was always a fan of JJ's legs because, I was a fan of like Tom Platz and Paul DeMeo, these guys who had the freaky quads. JJ had some really good quads himself. Yeah, and he was just very polished, very professional. From Long Beach, California, just like, is it Snoop Dogg? Well, a lot of rappers came out of Long Beach in the 90s. Warren G. But JJ, good poser, great with the transitions, really commanded the stage. It said 5'8", 250. I don't know if he was really 250 pounds on stage because he turned pro as a light heavyweight. So I don't think he's 50 pounds heavier than that here. I mean, sometimes the weights were a little fudged. They weren't quite accurate all the time. I did my best. Like I said, I used to go around with like a notepad to the backstage and ask these guys, what's your height? What's your weight? How old are you? When I did those interviews, the little box you saw in the corner, I usually conducted those interviews. I don't think I did it this one because I was still an intern. But I would ask the guys to fill out these little bio sheets before the interviews. So I would have good questions to ask them. It would have all little details about their life and things that were interesting about them, careers they had been part of or stuff like that. So that was the pose down. Yeah, so my first pro show, it was something else. You see the lighting was fantastic. The lighting was done by Mike Neveu, who was the chief photographer for Ironman magazine. He did all the covers for Ironman for all those years. And he also did the vast majority of the photography inside the magazine. And when people talk about the black backdrop and the great lighting, they'll typically reference the pro Ironman shows. Let's go to some of your comments before I go to walk my dog. Your mom's flip-flop. What's up? What's up? Popandal Vasile, thumbs up. Yeah, I apologize when I really mutilate your names, guys. I barely speak English, as you can see, so trying to pronounce some of these other names is a challenge. Damn, you looked insane there first competition. I wasn't in that competition. I wasn't in that. No. That was the first pro show I ever went to. It was February 1991. I had been out in LA for 1 month, and the footage you saw was from the American Muscle TV show. It was a magazine format TV show. It was an hour long. We did contest highlights. Those are some of the segments. We did a Valio workout with a different star bodybuilder every month. John Romano had a cooking segment. We had a gossip. We had fashion. Dude, it was a really cool show. I mean, I missed a lot. Terry Pastel was there, I think. Yeah, Joe. I actually showed Terry. I'll show him. I'll show the guys again later. Yeah, Terry was fourth place. Yeah, fourth place. Yeah. Those time that Bob competed without gear. No, I didn't know that. And I don't know anything about Bob Paris's gear use, but I would venture to say he did not use much. He always looked very healthy. I never saw him bulked up or unhealthy looking. Granted, we didn't see these guys year round the way we do now, but still, Bob always had a very healthy look to him. It looked, whatever amount of gear he was on, I would venture to say it was quite minimal, because I'm pretty sure he would have been more than 230 pounds at 6 foot if he had been blasting gear. Kalyan, I know wrong. I identify everybody in the lineup. Well, you're a good fan, Kalyan. Not everyone is. A lot of the young guys, they don't know anything older than a couple of years ago. But then you do have some guys like yourself who are historians and who go back and look at the old videos and the old photos online and stuff. Perillo trained Franco. Oh, yeah, RG. And I knew John Perillo a little. I shouldn't say a little. I knew him pretty well. I wrote for his magazine for 25 years. I met him. I used to talk to him on the phone all the time. I took his supplements. I followed his training principles with the fascial stretching and everything. I knew John. So yeah, John trained Franco for a while. He trained Linda Murray for a time. But I remember him talking about Franco. He said Franco had this intensity about him when he trained that he'd never seen quite that same level, where he described one time he had like 315 or 360. He had a bunch of weight on the incline barbell press, and John was spotting him, and he got to the point where it was clear he was almost done. And then he said he got this look in his eyes. He looked at himself in the mirror, and like his eyes filled with like some sort of rage that he could summon. And he banged out like 3 or 4 more reps when John thought there was no way this guy's getting another rep. Franco was a very intense guy. I remember those commercials with him, the Cybergenics commercials. They made me want to buy Cybergenics, because he said, he gave him all the credit, which of course, Cybergenics didn't make him look like that. Dave Thomas, he had a good interview on Eric. Was quite shocked as recreational drug use. Talk about Franco, yeah. I mean, a lot of us in this sport have had issues with rec drugs. Brain posing routines, see Brisbois, yeah. Steve actually married. I don't know if they're still married. I haven't kept up with Steve Brisbois. He married. There was a guy named Tom Sciola who owned a supplement company. I can't remember what the name of the company was, but their product was called Hot Stuff. And it was sort of like an everything in the kitchen sink supplement. They threw every popular supplement ingredient. They threw it into this like orange powder called Hot Stuff. And people would take it. And supposedly the first batches had actual D-ball in them. I don't know. Anyway, Steve married his daughter, and he moved from Canada to Florida, and he was there for years. Maybe he still is. I don't know. So tons of videos of girls getting their hair pulled out because of squats. Yeah, you got to be careful with those bars, man. Terry was awesome. Yeah, let's put him on again. What the heck? Why not? Why not? Because like I said, Terry doesn't get a lot of credit. That's still Vince Taylor there. Yeah, he packed a lot of muscle. Look at the fullness of the muscles he had and those abs. He actually, you can't see it because the name isn't the way. He had 8 abs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's actually all one muscle, the abdominal, the rectus abdominalis, with tendinous encryptions that crisscross it and either give you 4, 6, or 8 abs. Typical. Most people have 6, a formation that looks like 6 individual abs, but it's all one muscle. But Terry was really, really good. Yeah. I was a fan. Would really like to see where all the competitors would be now with modern knowledge of PD, especially Arnold. I'll tell you, Arnold, and the one I would love to see what he could look like on today's stuff would be Sergio Oliva, the late Sergio Oliva, the 3-time Mr. Olympia, originally from Cuba, was a Chicago policeman. He did not, I doubt he used much. I really don't. Some of you guys would be like, oh, he had to be on all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't think he was. His heyday was the late 60s, early 70s. And back then, a little D-ball, a little Deca, I don't even know if they had premium. I think they had premium balling. But the drug use back then was not, most of them didn't use much. And in fact, they only used it, from what I could tell, when a contest was coming. They would stay clean. They would train drug-free for most of the year. And then they would hop on the drugs and start eating and everything again once it was 12 weeks out from a contest or something. Like Arnold used to go down to something like 210 pounds, 215 pounds when he wasn't competing. And then he would grow into a show. He would get back on the gear. He would start eating again, training heavier again, and he'd end up on stage between 230 and 245, I guess. Pretty much Arnold's most common stage weights. But Sergio Oliva was so far ahead of his time in terms of muscle mass. He was like Ronnie Coleman before Ronnie was Ronnie, or Victor Richards, if you know who that was. That's what he looked like back in the late 60s, early 70s. I can only imagine what he could have looked like with today's gear and the training and supplements. I mean, I remember I interviewed him long after he retired for Muscle Mag, and he told me like he would come home from work. I don't know if he was a cop at that point or what he was talking about, but he was telling me how he used to eat. He would eat like a whole frozen pizza, unfrozen. I'm sure he heated it up, and a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi. That was his final meal of the day. He Pepsi and pizza. So can you imagine? Love nostalgia. Really nice. Yeah. Early 90s. I mean, I think everyone holds a special nostalgic place in their heart for when they got into the sport. And for me, this show, I was 21 years old. I just got into Los Angeles a month before. I was going out to training out in Gold's Venice and seeing all these guys training in person. Mike Quinn, Jim Quinn, Gary Stridham. I think Flex was an amateur, and then Flex Wheeler training there. It was amazing. I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like gawking at everybody the whole time. And this was my first pro show to see the first time I'd ever seen guys in contest condition. And I saw it under the best lighting of maybe ever. The Pro Ironman was known for its lighting. Guys used to actually do the show. One of the main reasons they did it was because they wanted to be photographed in that lighting. It made everybody look so much better. What's up, Blue? Oliver, what's up? Damn, I was about to say first competition. Yeah, geez. I never look like any of those guys. Coach, what's up, Randy? Randy's my longest client. She's going for her pro card this year as a master's. She has overcome, she had a heart attack. She had thyroid cancer. You can't keep her down. She just keeps coming back. Every time life knocks Randy down, she gets right back up again. She was a registered nurse for many years. Now she's a trainer and a coach herself. And thanks for joining us, Randy. Thanks for joining us. Pastel was Rob. No, I mean, if you look at him structurally, he was very, very narrow. There was one shot when I go back to the montage that they showed of the judging. You could see, I love that place. I competed there a couple of times. They had the Ironman Naturally there. I competed in that building twice in 94 and 95. Yeah. Yeah, this was the pose down. Yeah. They used to have they still have pose downs, but they used to judge the pose down. There's John Brown, that guy in the red there. He was the mentor for Sean Ray. Who else? Vince Taylor. He was Vince Taylor's mentor. There's JJ in the middle. Yeah, this was our cameraman up on stage, getting in everyone's faces. Franco right there. There's Renell right next to him. Renell, Bob Paris. This isn't a glitch. This was how we thought this looked cool, the editing style that we had back then. It was primitive. Momo got a lot bigger. He only lived another year and a half after that, but he got substantially bigger in that time. Ricardo Guia from Holland. Yeah, we actually showed, I think, I didn't show the whole segment from YouTube, but I think we showed everybody in the show, and there were about 20 guys in that show. Shows used to be really big. I remember the Night of Champions, the New York show, that's basically became the New York Pro. There were times when it had over 40. I think Milos was in it one year, and there were 45 guys on stage at once. 45 open men. We didn't have 212, so it was 45 pro bodybuilders on stage competing. Imagine that. Lee Haney was the first bodybuilder, I remember, yeah. So I had met Lee. We're looking at February 91. I think it was April 91. Lee came out to do a video. Our company was contracted to shoot his training video that would be given as a gift as part of this Lee Haney Mass Fuel pack bundle. It came with like a big mass gain shake, the Mass Fuel bars. Lee Haney, that was he was on all the packaging. And we shot the video down there, Sequoia Athletic Club in Orange County. I think it was April 91. And that was the first time I ever met Lee. And it was just, to be able to be around him in person. It was 2-day shoot. We shot all day. 2 days in a row, covered him training every body part. It was pretty cool. I was very lucky to be a part of all that. I think social media spoiled bodybuilding. It was cool not getting results in news only when the mags came out. Yeah, Dave. I mean, it was, you had to put in work to be a fan back then. Put it that way. Like I can vividly remember after the Arnold Classic or after the Olympia, calling up Gold's Gym Venice or World Gym Venice, and they would have the results written down on a piece of paper next to the phone because people would call and they would want the results. So you'd call and the guy on the desk, I'm sure they got sick of it, be like, okay, first place was Lee Haney, second place was Lee Labrada, third place is Rich Gaspari. He would read off the results for you. This company, the same company that did the American Muscle Show that I worked for, we had a 1-900 pump iron line that you could call, and I think it was 99 cents a minute. And there's different options. Press 1 for contest results. Press 2 for this. So people could get the results that way. But I used to have to call around to get the results and then write the script and fax it to the guy who did the voiceover for our 900 line. Yeah, you had to work. I mean, if you want to see these guys, you had to go to seminars or you had to go to contests. There was the magazines, even the magazines would come out with the results 4 to 6 weeks later. So you couldn't see a single picture of, say the Arnold Classic happened today. You wouldn't see it in the magazine for maybe sometimes with the way the printing, the schedules, the contest schedule and the printing deadlines, you might be able to see it in 3 weeks minimum. But typically it was more like 4, 5, 6 weeks sometimes before you finally see pictures from the Olympia or the Arnold. Can you imagine that? Now you see it immediately. You have live streaming. We didn't have that. You had to go to the show. If you wanted to see the contest back then, that day, you had to be at the contest. That's all there was to it. There was no internet, nothing like that. Terry sells a compact version, late great Serge Nubret, ironically about the French. Yeah, Serge was great. OG Mutant Victor. Yeah, I mean, Victor Richards, I don't know what gear he was on then, but it's safe to say that since the mid to late 80s, which was Victor's heyday, the drug aspect of the sport has evolved. So I can imagine he would look significantly better today than he did then. I never really watched Sergio a lot when I first started bodybuilding. When I became a bigger fan of his pictures. Yeah, Sergio had the craziest arms. I mean, I remember these black and white pictures that Arthur Jones took of him, like in a field or something, where he's hitting a single bicep, and the arm is bigger than his head, literally bigger than his head, and that was like 1972. Sergio was a freak. Sergio Oliva. Damn, that's wrong. Oh, Randy, yeah. Rob is amazing. One of the reasons I won't quit. Yeah. Her training partner, Rob, great guy. He's quite the booster. He helps out a lot with various aspects of Randy's bodybuilding. I mean, it's a solo sport, bodybuilding. It's an individual sport. It's just you up there on stage. But anybody who does this will tell you there are people behind the scenes that make it all possible. Whether it's training partner, coach, spouse, friends, even people online now that we have social media to encourage you and keep you going through those tough times. But Rob's one of those sick lineup. Yeah. Oh, Ron, correct. Don't worry about the spelling. What else we got? Branch is waiting for his walk. Remember Johnny Fuller, one of the hardest working bodybuilders, super long workouts. Yeah, the longest workout, because we were just talking about Serge Nubret. I don't know if anyone could beat what I saw this guy do. He was training chest for 3 hours. I kid you not. It was at Gold's Gym Fullerton, which later became Coliseum Gym. Milos bought it. I don't know what it is now. It was a powerhouse at one time. Anyway, he did probably 20 sets of flat bench press. He had like 185 on there, and he would do a set of 12 reps, walk around for a minute, come back, do it again and again and again and again. And I think he did 4 exercises altogether, but he did so many sets. It was like 3 hours long. I used to hear that Serge would take food to the gym with him because he was there so long, hours and hours and hours. He would have to have some snacks. He would have to eat something to just keep him going. Every John protege ended up being exceptional poser. Sean Raven, Mel. That's right, Melvin Anthony. You're right. John was more of a dancer when he posed. He was a great dancer. I remember, I don't know if it was this show. It probably was because I only saw him compete a couple times. He was almost done at this point in his career competing. He had to be out there for 5-6 minutes or more. Like, I know there's time limits on posing, but for some reason they used to let John go because he was just so entertaining. He was a real entertainer. He would dance, pop, locking, and muscle control, and it was a sight to see. He had a good amount of muscle on him too. He was a taller guy. He was like 6'1", 6'2". But yeah, you're right. Everyone that he coached became a very good poser because he really emphasized that. I remember vividly, he brought Melvin Anthony to the first Muscle Mania show we did. Same company that did all the American Muscle show. We produced the Muscle Mania and the Fitness America pageant events. And yeah, Melvin was in that first Muscle Mania. Skip LaCour won. Melvin was like third or fourth place in heavyweights. He was only like 22 years old. And I remember just being very impressed with his potential and with his posing. He was already a very good poser back then. Marcus Rule said how big Night Champions used to be over 40 most of the time. Oh, yeah. Night Champions was the biggest show of the year. The Olympia was the biggest in terms of prestige and money and all that. And the Arnold was bigger in terms of prestige and money. But the Night of Champions, Wayne DeMille's old show in New York City, I don't think it ever had less than 30 guys in it. It was typically between 35 and 45 guys up on stage. It was, talk about a deep lineup. And there was a lot of times where it would be the introduction of a lot of guys from Europe, people like Rule. I think that was the first U.S. show he ever did, was Night of Champions. Momo was an amazing bodybuilder. His best short bodybuilder was Heidi Derrick. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was his back. Dorian was inspired to build his back to the level that it became, because after he got beat by Momo in 1990 at the Night of Champions, he got so upset and he really analyzed physique. He's like, what did this guy beat me on? And one of the things that stood out to Dorian was that Benaziza had a better back, a much thicker back. So Dorian's like, okay. Dorian figured out, here's what I'm going to need to do to build my back up to the next level. And he did it. And, you know, after 1991, he never got beat again. So he came back during 91 to win Night of Champions, which he had been second place at his pro debut the year before. So his second pro show was the 91 Night of Champions. He won that. And his third pro show was the 91 Olympia, where he got second place to Lee Haney. And then nobody ever beat him again as a pro. I think social media really ruined bodybuilding. Yeah. Social media, you know, it didn't ruin bodybuilding. How are you going to ruin bodybuilding? I mean, some people think it's ruined regardless. Some people hate bodybuilding no matter what. So it's just changed. It's changed. You know, the world evolves, the world changes. That's just the way of the world, right? Serge Boy was using some kind of stimulant to train that long. He was the one doing French Powerball in the U.S. I mean, I keep hearing stimulants like Munzer was into like methamphetamine, cocaine. I'm not saying that I know this for a fact, but I've heard that many times. I heard Platz was into stuff like that. I don't think it was uncommon for bodybuilders of, especially the 80s, to indulge in stimulants, because we didn't have pre-workouts. I'm not saying meth, you should be using meth or cocaine as a pre-workout, but guys did. It wasn't unheard of. I know a lot of guys were into that. I don't know. I'm not naming names, but it was a way for these guys to train very hard, very long without any physical fatigue. They didn't feel any fatigue. Sergio, my here's most genuinely gifted body in the world. He's such a crap. Yeah, Sergio was again, I would love to see what Sergio could look like right now in today's world. I think Mike's fallen dead seeing someone train that long. Yeah. Mike's workouts were like 20, 30 minutes long. 1990 I was a member of Mid-City Gym in New York City, saw Serge warm up his legs in a squat position, doing short bounces. 1,100 I counted. Yikes. Yeah. I remember hearing up Kai Green used to warm up by doing the step mill for like an hour. An hour on the step mill as your leg training warm up. Jeez. And so he'll have the most pro victories. He did, Joe. I don't think anybody surpassed it. I think Kevin might have surpassed him, and then eventually Dexter Jackson surpassed everybody with 29 pro wins. I know we have like Ashley Kaltwasser has more pro wins, but we're talking about bodybuilding. So Dexter Jackson has that record, but Vince Taylor did hold it for a while. He did. Sergio's protege, Bob Gajda. It's G-A. The actual spelling was G-A-G-D-A from Chicago. It was on 5 sets. Yeah, he did 5 times 5 or something. Arnold Learning Swing Trainer at Sergio Chicago. Yeah, I remember someone talking about watching Sergio work out, and it took him 15 or 20 minutes just to take off all his jewelry and put it down on a bench before he would start training, because he's Cuban. And I know Cubans. I've been married to a Cuban for 34 years. You know, watches, bracelets, necklaces, rings, all that stuff. Bodybuilder Larry Pollock lived at Munzer and used to drive and buy meth, according to him. Yeah, I believe it. Record pro wins Vince and Kevin, then Ronnie, and finally Dexter. Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for clearing that up. Bruce Lee took cocaine because he thought it was more like a stimulant at different times. Yeah, I mean, cocaine, you know, 100 years ago, cocaine was in Coca-Cola, right? So they used to do all kinds of wacky shit back in the day. Anyway, guys, I have to go walk my dog. Branch needs his walk. So I hope you have enjoyed this trip down memory lane with me to the 1991 Pro Ironman. Totally different era, 34 years ago. some guys in there. Some of you are probably nostalgic and haven't seen them in a while. Others, that might have been the very first time you've seen or heard about these guys. You see, there was some really good talent way back then, going back well over 30 years. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome weekend, and I will talk to you next time.